Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Frida Cinema. Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, big round of applause for coming out. Yeah, this is the final installment of our Science on Screen series. Anyone been to any Science on Screen series this year? Yeah, we did The Devil's Backbone with a talk from a neuroscientist who plugs people up to different machines and measures their brain activity while watching horror movies. That was a great one. We had a Harvard physicist talk to us about the history of the atomic bomb, and we watched Oppenheimer together. I'm really excited to close out the series with Dr. Sandra Langeslag, who's joining us from the University of Missouri via Zoom. So I'll introduce her shortly. But thank you so much for coming out on a Tuesday night. We did not expect this event to sell out. This was our first time a Science on Screen event has sold out. So well done to all of you. You clearly, yeah, thank you, have an insatiable desire for cinema and heartbreak on a Tuesday night. What is wrong with all of you? But thank you for coming. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Sandra Langeslag. She is an associate professor in psychological sciences at the University of Missouri St. Louis. She's the director of the Neurocognition and Emotion and director of the Neurocognition of Emotion and Motivation Lab, where she studies the interaction between cognition and emotion and cognition and romantic love. So her research is super relevant and will enrich our viewing of this film. So please give a big round of applause to Dr. Sandra Langeslag and take it away. And
So thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm excited too. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So today I'm excited to talk to you about the neuroscience behind Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, the movie that you're about to see. And in this movie, you will see Clementine and Joel, and they are in a romantic relationship and they break up. And then they decide to have their memories erased of each other and of their relationship to be able to move forward, to not be heartbroken anymore. And so what you'll see in the movie is that Joel will have his memories erased by a company that offers that service. And he is asked to come into the office and bring reminders of Clementine, objects that make him think of her. And then they scan his brain to locate where those memories are in his brain. So then later on that night when he goes to sleep, to erase those memories from his brain. That's the idea. And this scene, of course, made me laugh because a brain scanner would not look like that. A brain scanner that you would need to see where memories are stored in the brain would look more like this. So this would be an fMRI scanner. And the other thing that made me laugh is that Joel in this scene is moving his head because he's talking. And you wouldn't do that if you were in an MRI scanner because that would blur the images that would be taken. And so you would definitely have to sit and lie very, very still. But in the movie, these are the kind of images that they then show. And these images look pretty realistic. And so this is what an image might look like that you would get from an fMRI machine. So you can see his brain structure in black and white, and in colors, you can see basically brain activation, which supposedly are the different regions where those memories of Clementine are stored. So the types of memories that Joel is trying to erase are episodic memories, and episodic memories are memories for specific events in your life. And they are different from, for example, semantic memories, which are memories for facts. So for example, Paris is the capital of France is a fact. That's a semantic memory. It's not an event. So that would not be an episodic memory. We also, for example, have skill memories, which is, for example, that you know how to drive a car. That's also not an episodic memory. So he's specifically looking to have episodic memories erased for any events that have to do with Clementine. Now, research has shown that these episodic memories are stored throughout the cortex in the brain. And so here you can see a picture of the brain. And this is as if you're looking to the person from the left. And so the eyes of the person would be on the left side of this picture. The back of the head would be on the right side. And you can see here the brainstem that turns into the spinal cord. And so this is the cortex here that we're looking at, the wrinkled part of the brain, the outside part of the brain. And the cortex is specialized. So different parts of the cortex have different functions. And in this picture, you can see where the information from the different senses is processed. And so you can see here in red, this is the visual cortex where visual information is processed. And so, for example, if you have a memory of going on a date to a restaurant with your beloved, what things looked like, what the restaurant looked like, what your beloved looks like, will be stored in the visual cortex. Then here in green, you see the auditory cortex. So that's the part of the brain that processes information that comes through your ears. And so that's where part of the memory will be stored, part of the memory that is about what things sounded like. So what your partner sounded like, what the restaurant sounded like, things like that. And then you see here in blue, is the primary taste cortex. So that is where, for example, memories about what the food tasted like would be stored. And so those different components of episodic memories are stored in different parts of the brain. The brain is really specialized. So here's another brain picture. This is when you're looking at the brain from the bottom. So here in the middle, you see the brainstem, and the eyes will be here at the top, and here at the bottom is where the back of the head is. And we have a specific brain region, the fusiform face area, that has information about faces. So that's where information about the faces that you had seen at the date at the restaurant would be stored. We have areas that specifically deal with objects, so things here. We have regions of the brain that deal with places, so they will remember what the restaurant looked like, for example. And we even have something that's called the body area, and that area specializes in what people's bodies look like. And especially, it really responds very strongly to headless bodies. So that region really likes bodies without heads even more than bodies with heads. So these pictures that the company acquired from Joel's brain as he was looking at all those objects that reminded him of all those memories with Clementine are somewhat realistic. It's possible to get images like these if you have people retrieve memories while in the scanner. But of course, this idea that you then at night can go in and erase those memories from someone's brain, that is, of course, science fiction. That cannot be done right now, if ever. So how do we go about reducing painful memories that people have? And so in real life, memories typically just become less painful over time. That happens naturally. This is something that does happen during sleep. So sleep is very important for this process. And you may have experienced things in the past. So for example, I went through a breakup with my high school sweetheart. This is a long time ago. At the time, it was super painful. But right now, I can still remember those things, but they're not painful to remember anymore. They are neutral memories. I didn't forget about it, but it doesn't hurt me anymore every time I think about it. And I also don't think about it that often anymore. So typically, even painful memories will fade in terms of how painful they are. But sometimes people need a little help because sometimes these memories remain painful for a long time and can become really disturbing. And so that's when we would say people have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And there are several treatments for PTSD. And so, for example, you can do prolonged exposure therapy, which is exposing people to things that remind them of a traumatic event. So, for example, maybe someone got into a car accident and now they avoid driving in the car because that scares them. But then exposing them to a car and making sure that they're safe in the process will teach them that cars are not scary. And so that reduces fear to expose people to those trauma reminders. There's also medication that can be helpful. So propranolol administration. So propranolol is a beta blocker. It's used for treating hypertension and also for treating anxiety. And if you have people with PTSD take this medication, it actually reduces their recall of aversive material and the emotional responses that are elicited by cues that remind them of the traumatic event. People can also do EMDR treatment, so that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that is where a therapist will ask you to recount the event while making you do rapid eye movements or sometimes listening to clicks. And the idea is that this reduces how vivid these memories are and how emotional they are. So turning them into more neutral memories as opposed to really forgetting them. There's another medication, prazosin, sorry. It's also used for hypertension is also prescribed for hypertension, but it has been shown to reduce nightmares and night wakings in PTSD patients. And so if they sleep better at night, then that natural process of making memories less painful over time can then happen in these patients, which will eventually help them reduce their PTSD symptoms. So there are some things that people can do in real life to make unpleasant memories less unpleasant, but it's not about forgetting the entire event. It's about making the memories more neutral, more sort of factual, and less painful. So these memories that Joel has are oftentimes happy memories because they are memories from when he and Clementine were still happy in their relationship. And so these memories themselves are not necessarily painful. And so he doesn't have PTSD, I think. And so what can people do to cope with heartbreak, basically, because that's what Joel wants to do. And so I've done some research on love regulation, which is the use of behavioral or cognitive strategies to change the intensity of current feelings of romantic love. And I've shown that some people believe that love regulation is undesirable or difficult. And so undesirable means people think they shouldn't do this, or they think maybe they should do this, but it's impossible to do, or at least very difficult. But I've also shown in my research that people can actually downregulate love feelings. So they can make love feelings less intense if they get the right instructions on how to do that. And so in my research, I've shown that if I ask people to negatively reappraise their beloved, the relationship, or the future, that decreases love feelings for that person and also attention for that person. And by negative reappraisal, I mean thinking about the negative aspects. So negative reappraisal of the beloved would be thinking about the negative aspects of all those habits that you didn't enjoy about this person, mean stuff they've said, annoying friends. And then negative reappraisal of the relationship could be thinking about, we didn't have the same life goals, or we fought a lot, we didn't have the same hobbies, things like that. And negative reappraisal of the future might be thinking that, yes, we may get married, but like so many people, we will probably get a divorce later on. And so those strategies I've shown in several studies now do actually decrease love feelings for an ex-partner or even a current partner, and decrease attention for the ex-partner, which could be helpful when encountering reminders of the ex-partner, for example, on Facebook, or maybe you run into them at the grocery store or something. But I started this line of research because I wanted to help people that were heartbroken. And I thought if I can make them less in love with their ex-partner, they're going to feel better. And so I was able to make them less in love with their ex-partner, but it made them feel worse. So it made them feel more pleasant, which of course was not my intention. But I've also shown that some other strategies make people feel better. So they don't change how in love someone is, but it makes people feel more pleasant. And those strategies are distraction. So this means thinking about things that have nothing to do with your beloved or your ex-partner, and positive reappraisal of the situation. So thinking about all the pros of being single, or at least not being in a relationship with that person anymore. Maybe there was food they never wanted to eat, or there were these places that you wanted to go to and they never wanted to come with. And so things like that, if you think about those things, it makes you feel better. And so what I would suggest people do when they are heartbroken is they first think about all those negative aspects about their ex-partner, their relationship, and the future with that partner, to decrease their love feelings, and then distract themselves and think about the good side of being single or not being in a relationship with that person anymore to make them feel better. Okay, so and finally, I want to say something about the storytelling of this movie. And so research has shown that memory is better for information that relates to prior knowledge. And when I teach my classes, this, for example, means that I tell my students they need to read the textbook before they come to my lecture, because if they have read the textbook, then they can better remember and understand what I'm saying in the lecture because they can relate that back to whatever they've learned from reading the textbook. However, this movie, like many movies and also many books, is told in reverse chronological order. And when I watch movies like this or read books like this, I always get very annoyed. The teacher in me gets very annoyed because I'm always thinking like, this is terrible. People are not going to be able to remember this. I'm usually not able to remember movies because memory is better if we can relate it to prior knowledge, and you're telling me things in the wrong order. But I've read that the screenwriter of this movie does this often. And what he wants to accomplish is that you can watch movies multiple times and have a different experience every time. Because the second time you watch the movie, you know things, and then you can watch it again and it will be a different experience. And so I hope that whether you are watching the movie tonight for the very first time or if you've seen it before, that you will enjoy it. So have fun. So here's my contact information. I have a website, I have a Facebook page of the lab, and then here's also my email address, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Langeslag. Can put your hand up if anyone has any questions. I want to do a quick show of hands. I'm going through a breakup tonight or right now. Anyone feel like sharing? Yeah? Okay, hopefully you got some great tools to deal with that. I think going to the movies, going to the Frida, maybe become a volunteer, meet someone new. Can I get a show of hands for anyone who has a question for the professor? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Coming over.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Not a breakup question, but when Joel is just spoiler, sorry. When Joel is talking to yeah, earmuffs. When Joel is talking to Tom Wilkinson, the doctor, about the procedure, and he asks, does this procedure cause brain damage? And then technically speaking, the procedure is brain damage. I know it's a science fiction aspect of the movie, but I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
So theoretically, right, if this were possible, I don't think it would actually do brain damage, because what it would do, so when you learn something new, you will form new connections between neurons. And when you unlearn something, or when you forget something, those connections disappear. So theoretically, what the procedure could do is it could undo those connections. It could make them disappear, which is a natural process. It happens in our brain all day, every day. New connections are formed, and old ones that we don't need anymore are removed. So no, I don't think that procedure, if it would be possible, would cause brain damage.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? We got one over here. Just schlepping across the auditorium. Stand by. I'm going to pass this to you.
Hi, I just wanted to know, for your study, how did you do the questionnaires with your participants? Was it like 8-session durations? Like, did you do it in one session with them? How did you conduct that?
Yeah, good question. So this was just a single session where they did those strategies several times, like 30 times usually within a session. But yeah, so I was able to show that it works, at least in the short term, that when people do these strategies, in the moment, that decreases how in love they are with their ex-partner or their beloved. We do still need studies to test the long-term effects of these strategies. I think the effects are pretty short-lived. So my guess is that you would have to do this at least daily, or maybe a couple times a day, for the effect to really last for a long time. But we have not technically tested that yet. That's difficult to do, these long-term studies, right? To keep people, keep them participating over time. Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds like that question asker psychologies. Well done. Very nice. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, coming around.
So in your study, did you notice that there was any correlation between the length of a relationship and how easy it was to, I guess, feel less of the heartbreak?
So I'm not sure that we tested that. But if we did, then there was no effect. What I found most striking was I recruited people that were upset about a breakup. And I didn't care as a researcher how long ago the breakup was, although I did ask them when they came into the lab, I did ask them how long was your relationship and how long have you been broken up? And there was one person that had the breakup was 11 years ago, and they were still upset about that breakup. And so that was an outlier, I think, but it does show that people can remain upset about a breakup for a long time and potentially even longer than the relationship lasted to begin with. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from the audience? We got one more. I think we can do this question and maybe one more. Coming around.
Hello. Regarding your study, I'm curious as to whether you noticed any differences in gender, perhaps with how they reappraised, or what types of negative reappraisals or positive reappraisals, reappraisals they tended to stick with, or?
Yeah, good question. So in my studies, people typically do this silently, so I don't know what they're thinking. So I ask them, think about this annoying friend of your ex-partner, or think about this mean thing that they said, but then I don't know what they're actually thinking about. I typically don't test for gender differences in my studies for two reasons. One is a practical reason. If I were to do that, I would need to test twice the number of participants. And so that would be a lot more expensive and more time consuming. Also, that while there are definitely gender differences in love, for example, I don't really have a reason to believe that these strategies would be more or less effective in different genders. And so I have not tested for gender differences because I suspect there wouldn't be any, but of course we would know until I tested it, but I haven't done it yet.
Interesting question. Any others? Because I have one more. This is a great program that we do. We look for academics with interesting research like you, Dr. Langeslag, and pair it up with movies like the Frida. I wanted to know, do you have any other films that you think deal with memory and heartbreak in an interesting way that you would like our audience to see? Any movie recommendations that you could give to us?
So that's a great question. So I love watching movies, but I am terrible at understanding the plot and at remembering movies. So I always need my husband to explain what's going on, and then he will also say like, "Remember that movie?" And I'm like, "Did we watch that? I have no recollection of that." And so I'm not a great person to ask for recommendations. If you are interested in a movie that deals with memory specifically, then Memento is an interesting one. Although it's of course also not scientifically super accurate, but that is one that deals with memory in a very interesting way.
Thank you so much. Maybe we'll see you next year for Memento. Folks would be interested to come out for that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one more big round of applause for Dr. Sandra Langeslag. Thank you so much. We'll say goodnight to you, and we're going to dive into our film. Thank you so much for joining us in Southern California.
Thanks so much for having me, and enjoy the movie.